Good day, all you people out there in the sane and rational world. This is Paul Elam with A Voice for Men, and I am sitting with the one and only founder of the first men's rights-based political party in the Western world, Mr. Mike Buchanan, coming to us from the UK. Hi, Mike. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm very well, Paul, and how are you?
I'm doing good. I can't complain too much. I got to tell you, getting excited about ICMI 16.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real buzz happening, and I know there's a few things we need to talk about on the conference, but no, I just it's all looking as good as it possibly could about 3 months out.
Yep, it's looking great. Mike just also scored a great big coup, I think, getting Philip Davies, an MP, to speak. We had a senator from Canada speak at the first ICMI, and now we have an MP for the second one. I don't think it gets any better than that, and I think this is onward and upward in best fashion to get legitimacy and more of a voice in the mainstream for these issues, which we still have a long way to go in order to get. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the other surprise speaker, which I did not expect to happen. I got to tell you, Mike is something. But what I want to start what I'm curious about is not only is Mike planning this massive conference representing how many, 16 countries from around the world, or was it more than that?
16 at the moment, yeah.
Yep, 16 countries represented from around the planet at ICMI 16. Not only is he planning and executing all that, he's also been out there tearing up a storm on the male genital mutilation issue with protests. And so before we get to the juicy details about ICMI 16, which is getting more exciting by the day, I need to ask about these protests, Mike. You've been kicking up a storm out there. What's been going on?
Yes, it's been going very well. It probably bears repeating. I mean, some of these things, Paul, I'm sure you feel the same. You know, you repeat things 1,000 times, and then you'll still get people who didn't know the things. But it does bear repeating that MGM is undoubtedly illegal in the UK, but the criminal justice system doesn't pursue the mutilators. Now, I'm told by a number of people that the situation is the same in the States and Canada when you actually look at it. The criminal justice system doesn't go after the people it should go after. So we've so far had 3 anti-MGM protests. The first was outside the Conservative Party conference last October, and for those not in the UK, the Conservative Party is currently in government. The second protest was in Parliament Square last International Men's Day, at the same time that Philip Davies MP was holding the first ever parliamentary debate on men's issues, in which he mentioned male circumcision briefly at the end. The third was held recently in Luton, outside the Thornhill Clinic, the leading private MGM clinic in the UK. It was the largest ever anti-MGM protest in the UK, so far as we can tell, by some margin. Now,
Oh, wow.
Luton has a 25% Muslim population, but we encountered virtually no antagonism at all. Indeed, we had a number of very amicable and useful discussions with Muslims that we met. We recently announced that we'll be holding at least 3 more MGM protests before the conference, and perhaps even more. The first will be in Golders Green, an area of North London best known for its large Jewish community. Now, we'll be protesting outside a clinic where a Martin Harris works as a doctor and a Moyle. And he was recently placed on your known genital mutilators directory.
That would be at neonatalcutting.org.
Yeah. I mean, a wonderful thing. And I'll have a few words to say a bit later about the really quite interesting impact that directory is having on the ground here.
If you don't mind, Mike, one of the things that I want to bring up, and you and I have privately discussed this a number of times, and it is finally we're beginning to see, and I think a lot of it is because of your work, that we're finally starting to see the anti-male genital mutilation voice emerge in the men's rights movement. Because, there was some resistance to that for some years. And now we're finally starting to see, after maybe educating a lot of people, that this is not just a cosmetic snip, that this is actually the removal, the amputation of an organ of 20,000 nerve endings that creates scar tissue that behaves differently for the rest of the individual's life. I mean, the research on this is overwhelming. As you pointed out, it is clearly illegal. And I believe that's true in the United States too. I do not believe, I believe that it's covered in assault statutes.
Exactly the same here, Paul. Exactly the same.
So this is an immoral, illegal procedure. And I'm sad to say, I mean, I'm not complaining about it, but even the men's rights community has had a while taking to catch up with what MGM is and why it's an important men's issue. And so I just want to give you some kudos for the great work out there. And I want you to know that ABFM's behind you. We're continuing to do our work at neonatalcutting.org, putting doctors on that registry, and we're not going to stop. Because, as you and I have discussed, this is, I believe, a winnable battle.
It totally is, Paul. It was one of the reasons that we took it on. I mean, there are, God knows, enough battles out there that are not winnable with the resources available to us. But MGM, we think, is. And to go back to your point about some ambivalence on the part of MRAs, I think this is a red pill of its own.
Yes,
it's. I mean, there's just so many great MRAs who a year or two back didn't get it on MGM. Some of them cut themselves, were circumcised themselves. But now I think the awareness of just how horrendous, human rights assault this is, on just so many levels. Anyway, I'll sort of come to that a little bit later.
And that's what it is. I mean, and I got to say, as a man that was mutilated at birth, I lived with this my whole life, thinking that's normal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I saw in the shower in high school. When we played sports, and it just, occasionally I saw a guy that was uncircumcised, but I didn't think about it, right? It just not something that entered my mind, and it wasn't until I started reading the literature. And especially the long-term impact. And this is what I think so many people don't get. It's not just the loss of sensitivity, but the incidence of depression and anxiety and sexual dysfunction in middle age in circumcised populations is drastically higher than in uncut men. And so anyway.
I agree, Paul. There's not a single argument I'm aware of for, if you like, on medical grounds for doing MGM that wouldn't be equally valid for FGM. But of course, nobody would ever use those arguments for FGM. So,
absolutely.
The double standard is so stark. It's almost beyond anything else, I think, that we fight about.
You see, I can't even. To me, the practice is so abhorrent. And as you know, I write satire pieces on a lot of very sensitive subjects. Yeah. I wouldn't even write a piece of satire about FGM.
No.
Because I just couldn't make myself satirize something that sadistic and wrong. But it's a huge business in the West, big money in it.
Indeed.
And so anyway, kudos for that. I just wanted to say thank you for that work. I'm looking forward to hearing the reports on the future protests, and I'm really looking forward to the day that society wakes up and, for God's sake, starts to realize we can't be sexually mutilating little boys for whatever reason.
I agree. And a tip of the hat to you guys and Gary Costanza in particular. I mean, I'd love to see the faces of these people in the UK, these doctors and Moyles in the UK, who on the Monday they're going about their business, and on the Tuesday there's a political party that's named them, and there's an outfit in the States that have put them on the known genital mutilators directory. You'd like to be a fly on the wall to see the expressions of those guys on that day, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes, you would. and I want to echo your sentiments about Gary Costanza. He is ABFM's Director of Activism for Anti-Male Genital Mutilation. This guy's a workhorse. There's not, we don't have huge resources, but he's a guy that works with everything he has to get this message out there. And he's very much appreciated. I hope he makes it to the conference, speaking of that.
Oh, it would be great if he could. It'd be great because I mean, one of the things that he's so good at, he doesn't just link. I mean, I think there'd be a service in just linking to these people's websites, but he picks apart the detail. And as I've done that kind of thing in the past, and I know you have, and that doesn't take 10 minutes.
It doesn't.
It takes hour after hour of really, some work.
Because all these physicians and all these clergy that are mutilating babies, almost to everyone that I've seen, puts out outright lies and disinformation about the procedure.
Yes, they do. They do.
And that's got to stop. I mean, it's funny, once you recognize the truth about something, people tend to not want to do it. And until you force them, they're going to continue to lie. But anyway, we're sort of time limited today. I just wanted to give you a salute for that. But I'm really excited to talk about ICMI 16. And just for those of you who don't know, this is something that started in 2014 when we had the first ICMI just outside of Detroit, Michigan. Mike was there, spoke at that conference. So were a lot of other people. We had 15 people. It was an international affair. It was a blast. It was a great time, even though there were very stressful circumstances. We had to change venues at the last minute. All kinds of things that could go wrong did go wrong. And it still turned out to be just an incredibly uplifting event with a community spirit and a lot of fellowship that was amazing. Wouldn't you say so?
I would. I mean, it will be seen one day as a historic turning point for men and boys, I believe, Paul. There's no question about that. It was of historical importance.
I agree. I think it was, and I think this one is too, because what Mike has managed to do is, like I said, put together an array of people from 16 different countries. We have everybody from Eastern Europe to India to Australia, Canada, the United States, the UK, of course, Scandinavia is represented across the board. This lineup of speakers is amazing, and these are all people that really know their stuff, too. And, of course, you have stellar people like Karen Strawn coming to speak. Sage Gerard will be there, representatives from the Honey Badger, and, my goodness, people just in the audience, people like Peter Lloyd and others that will be there. That you'll be able to meet and spend time with, socializing after the speeches. By the way, I'm going to drop this probably 5 or 10 times before we end this conversation. In the low bar, there is a place. I'll leave Mike to tell you about his goals, but I know that there's a goal that Mike wants to reach so he can do something else even better with the conference. And there's a handful of tickets that need to be sold for that. So there's a link in the low bar to go in and get your seat right now. We're less than 3 months out. It is time to make your plans, your travel plans. It's time to get your seat secured, because this is something I don't think you want to miss. I know that the 14 turned out that way. I can't wait. I got my plane ticket just the other day. I'm so looking forward to this.
Indeed. Well, I mean, there's not much more than 12 weeks to go now, but only 7 weeks before we're planning to stop selling the tickets, Paul, which is Sunday the 5th of June. So we're not planning to sell tickets at the door. And the gap between ending ticket sales and the conference starting is basically so that we can sort out some high security ID badges. So I would say to people, if you want to come, you really don't want to wait too much longer before you order a ticket. And
so that was the 7th of next month, you said, or 7th of June.
Sorry, the 5th of June, Sunday the 5th of June.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
5th of June. At the moment the final day. Yeah. Now we've had just a terrific response to the news of our two speakers, who you mentioned, Philip Davis MP, a Conservative MP, the only one of 650 MPs who ever speak out on issues relating specifically to men and boys, and then we have Mark Pearson, who may not be so well known a name, but he was the poor guy. He's a 51-year-old contemporary artist, and he was charged with sexually